The overwhelming majority of students in New York City's public school system are African American or Hispanic. But when it comes to the city's elite public high schools, the racial mix is strikingly different.
The racial statistics are disturbing.
These schools are superior academic institutions. Not every kid can go.
Stuyvesant offered entry to 926 students last year. Just 13 offers went to blacks.
The primary obstacle? A standardized test taken in 8th grade, the one and only factor considered by these schools.
This is a matter of injustice that has to be addressed. I want to find any form of action that I possibly can find.
Every spring when the high school admissions results come out, there's a fresh wave of outrage over the lack of diversity in the city's 8 specialized high schools.
Yeah, I saw a story that said this year just 10% of offers went to Black and Hispanic students, in a system that's about 70% Black and Hispanic.
And there's near unanimous agreement across the political spectrum that something must be done about this. The last voice you heard in those opening clips was Mayor Bill de Blasio. He's been promising to address the racial imbalance since he was a candidate in 2013.
Yeah, but year after year, the numbers don't change. I'm Sabrina Duquesne, a senior at Brooklyn College Academy High School.
And I'm Taylor McGraw, editor of The Bell.
This season, on Miseducation, we're diving into the deeply unequal high school system in New York City, guiding you through the segregated hallways, classrooms, and cafeterias that we have come to accept as normal, even though we shouldn't.
Sabrina, what do listeners absolutely need to know about specialized high schools?
Well, there's 8 of them. They're like the Ivy League of the high school system. If you include LaGuardia, an art school that requires an audition, there are about 18,000 students in specialized high schools. 55% of those students are Asian, and 27% are white. Even though Asian and white students each make up about 15% of students overall.
And why is that such a problem?
So many reasons. First off, what does it say about us as a diverse city if our quote-unquote best schools have hardly any Black or Hispanic students? And second, these schools offer a myriad of resources and opportunities that students at under-resourced and underfunded schools could only dream of receiving.
Talk about the admissions process.
Yeah, so specialized high schools use a single test as the sole determinant for admissions. Any 8th grader can get in if they score above the cutoff. So you could have saved the world from alien domination, but if you don't score high enough, you won't get in.
You always got a sense of humor about these things, Sabrina. Sabrina, did you take the test when you were in the 8th grade?
I did. It wasn't that great. The English portion was okay. The wording was a little wacky, kind of like the SAT now, but the math really kicked my butt. I didn't have any private tutors or any, prep like that to really help me.
Was it surprising to you that you didn't do better, given how good of a student you were?
Yeah, I was on my way to becoming valedictorian in my middle school. And, it's me and about 5 other students that my teachers claimed, they were like, you guys are definitely getting into, the specialized high schools. But we all took the test, we all tried our best, and none of us got in.
I was looking at the stats at Stuyvesant High School the other day, which is considered to be one of the, the best of the best. Only 0.6% of students at Stuyvesant are Black.
That's insane. I've never heard of that low of a concentration of Black people.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe Vermont or Montana.
Let's Google it. Let's find out.
Give it a shot.
I'm searching this up. Lowest concentration of Black people by state. Let's see. Wow. So you have Montana with a hefty 0.67%, and you have Vermont with 0.87%.
Those are the 2 lowest?
Yeah.
Wow. If you go to a public school in Montana, you have a better chance of sitting in class with a Black student than if you go to Stuyvesant High School in Manhattan. But we're going to stop talking about numbers for a while because I feel like most stories about specialized high schools only focus on the numbers and forget about the human experiences behind them.
On this episode, you're going to hear from 2 students who both go to specialized high schools and had significantly different experiences getting there. Here's my fellow intern, Yasmin Chokrain, with the story.
As my freshman year at Stuyvesant comes to an end, I keep reminding myself, it's almost summer. That's the mantra that's been running through my head as I work through piles of homework and attempt to memorize an entire semester's worth of notes to study for finals. For lots of students, summer means traveling with family, getting around to writing that novel you still haven't started, playing Fortnite or Call of Duty, or going to camp. However, if you find yourself at Elite Academy in Flushing or A+ Academy in Sunset Park, you'll see middle schoolers sitting in compact, feverish rooms working on linear equations and logical reasoning problems, hoping, praying for the chance to attend one of the city's 8 specialized high schools.
I would go, during the school year, every Saturday and Sunday at first for 4 hours each day.
This is Catherine Sanchez, a rising senior from the Bronx, describing the prep she did as a 7th grader to get ready for the SHSAT.
Towards the end of the school year, I started picking up more. So Fridays, I think from 5 to 8. And over the summer, it was basically 5 days a week.
For how long?
Probably a good 3 to 4 hours every day. A lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot of hours. That's 15 hours. A week.
In the summer.
She took the specialized high school exam, but the odds of getting in were not in Catherine's favor, especially when you consider the middle school she came from.
Majority Hispanic, majority Black. We didn't have any clubs. We had newspaper, but that was about it. Maybe 3 sports teams.
In the Bronx, there are entire neighborhoods that, some years, don't send a single student to specialized high schools. But Catherine wanted to go to Stuyvesant. Her 8th grade teacher told her that no students from the school had gone to Stuyvesant in 2 decades.
I'm a Hispanic woman from the Bronx, and I'm trying to get into Sty. It's not realistic, whatever. So be it,
Catherine's mom enrolled her in a test prep center called Mamoon's Tutorial.
I was the only, Hispanic kid in the class.
Many SHSAT prep centers are located in predominantly Asian neighborhoods. Catherine's was no exception.
There was the Bengali flag in the room. It was in the basement. There was at least 60 people in that room, and it's really only meant to be for 20.
When she first started going to Mamoon's, Catherine's practice exam scores were very low.
I got a 30 in English and an 8 in math. I remember that so clearly. And I was just watching him for the next 2 hours, solve these equations and apply these theorems, and I was like, what the hell is X? It was so challenging to be I'm in the honors class, or I'm supposed to be really smart in comparison to majority of my grade, and I don't know what this is.
Catherine said it felt unfair to be receiving instruction that her peers at school weren't, but she stuck with it. Her practice scores kept climbing, and on test day, in the fall of 8th grade, she took the exam, listed Stuyvesant as her top choice, and waited anxiously for the results. We're going to return to Catherine's story in a bit. First, I want to introduce you to Charlotte Rich-Jack. Charlotte's also a freshman. She grew up in Washington Heights.
It's a very mixed community, so there's a lot of Jewish people, which I am, a big Dominican community, there's a large African American community.
Her parents enrolled her in the local elementary school.
But by the time I was in 4th grade, it was time for me to go. I was just very bored academically. I wasn't being challenged. I was the type of kid who could wake up at 8 o'clock, do my homework by 8:15, and be at school by 8:30. So my parents switched me to the Spire Legacy School, which is a small private school on 59th Street for advanced learners. My classes were 12 kids on average. The entire grade was 25.
Tuition at Spire is $43,500 a year. That's above the median annual income in the Bronx.
Specialized high schools weren't looked at as the dream schools at my school at all. They were your backups. They were what you went to if you didn't get into the privates.
Still, Charlotte says most of her classmates, including her, took the specialized high school exam.
I took a practice test the day after I got out of school in 7th grade.
After that,
tutoring sessions and more diagnostics, and I wouldn't say that I did a ton of work to get in because I also had a pretty good middle school education, but I definitely did prep for it.
You're probably starting to get a sense of how resources influence who gets into specialized high schools. I wanted to understand why, so I sat down with an expert on the topic.
My name is Lazar Treschan. I'm the Director of Youth Policy here at the Community Service Society of New York. The SHSAT is just a sorting mechanism for screens that have been placed between our students at much earlier ages, but it's also making them worse. And I think they're actually doing them a disservice by wasting their time on this ridiculous test. These are wonderful students. They should be exploring other aspects of their intelligence, creativity, and most of all, their time.
I asked Lazar whether or not there was any sort of bias that was skewing the results of the exam.
The scoring of the test does create a bias for test prep, given that you are rewarded more for extremely high scores on one section than you are for very high scores on both sections.
It's kind of weird. You have a better chance of getting in if you get 100 on one section and a 60 on the other than if you get a 90 on both.
I don't think that studying for the SHSAT makes you good at anything but the SHSAT.
We're going to return to Catherine and Charlotte in just a moment, but I want to give you a better picture of the specialized high school test itself. Here's the breakdown. 114 questions, 57 math, 57 verbal. All but 5 questions are multiple choice. Students have 90 minutes to complete each section of the test, so that's about a minute and a half per question. All of these details are laid out in a 170-page DOE handbook that includes a practice test. Do you think you could pass it? Here's your chance to find out. I have my friend Tanya here who has courageously agreed to attempt one of the practice test problems.
Hi, my name is Tanya Benavides and I teach 4th grade in Brooklyn.
How confident are you that you're going to be able to get this right?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say maybe like a 6. And I've also taught logic before, and I've previously studied for the LSAT.
Listeners out there, if you want to join in on the fun, get a pencil ready. After Tanya reads the question, hit pause and try to solve it. But don't forget to time yourself. Remember, under 90 seconds is the goal. All right, Tanya, let's do it.
Jenny starts a game with twice as many marbles as Keiko. Jenny gives Keiko 5 marbles, but she still has 10 more than Keiko. How many marbles did Jenny have to start with? She needed to have at least 20, because she had 10 more. Nope, that's not true. She has to have 10 more than Keiko. Unless Keiko started with 5 and Jenny gave her 5. But that still doesn't tell me how many marbles Jenny started off with. And then Jenny gives 5 to Keiko. So Keiko now has 10 and Jenny has 25. That means that she has 15 more, so that's not it. And maybe Keiko had 25. But that still doesn't tell me what Jenny had to have started off with. Oh, so she started off with 30. Because she gave... No, that's not true. That still doesn't tell me how many Jenny had to start off with. Does that make sense? Do you know the answer? How long has it been?
We're at 4.5 minutes.
Okay, I'm gonna get this.
Tanya finally got the right answer, 40 marbles. I used to teach 7th grade math, which is the last full year of instruction students get before taking the SHSAT. I know those standards backwards and forwards, and this problem does not fit any of them. This is an algebra question. So it's clear to me why students have to do a bunch of extra prep to do well on this test. If you want to try more problems, we have the full practice test available on this episode's page at bellvoices.com. Let us know how it goes by tagging us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at MisEducationPod. Okay, back to Yasmin.
After 13 months of test prep at a cost of about $2,500, Catherine did well enough on the exam to get into Stuyvesant.
Once I did prove myself, people were like, oh my god, so smart, I knew you'd get in. I was like, okay.
I met Catherine in the fall through Caliber, Stuyvesant's literary magazine. As she is 2 years ahead of me, I've looked to her for advice on the upcoming years. I asked Catherine to describe her experience walking into Sty for the very first time.
Here I was, walking with my, totally dark cousin to school, and she was like, no one here looks like us, and I was like, yeah. And it was just terrifying, truly mortifying.
You heard in the opening about how few black students there are at Stuyvesant. There aren't many Hispanic students either, just 2.8%. It's an issue many students and teachers are aware of, but few acknowledge it. Recently, though, one of Catherine's teachers did, when discussing the school walkouts and protest of gun violence.
She's like, oh, we should really be protesting something else. And that's, educational equity. She mentioned that, she hasn't had a black student in over 4 years in any of her classes. That really resonated with me, because I think I've been in all of my classes at Sci, I've probably been in like 1 or 2 classes with a Black student. And that like is crazy to think about.
But sadly very real. I myself have only been in class with 2 Black students this year. But the racial disparities of Stuyvesant aren't the only issue students encounter.
My freshman year was like horrible, torture. Sophomore year got worse. And junior year is just like a whole thing. Like I can't even begin to process it. I don't really like overworking myself to a point where like my mental state is in question. So in some ways, Stuyvesant really like brings down my overall mood in a way that I don't think another high school would do. But, you know, it has a name, it has like the high esteem, and like that sort of makes it worth it in a way, sadly.
Now, we return to Charlotte. She got into a specialized high school, the High School of American Studies at Lehman College in the Bronx.
You walk in the morning and the hall is crowded. People are lying on the floor. There's a lot of coffee. There's this drive. There's this energy where you gotta go.
Founded in 2002, American Studies is one of the 5 newer specialized high schools, and with just 377 students, it's also the smallest. But like the original 3, Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, and Brooklyn Tech, American Studies is majority white and Asian. Just 4% of students are Black, and 13% are Hispanic.
My school has a summer program called the Discovery Program where they take kids who got just below the cutoff and they basically tutor them thinking that it'll catch them up or bring them up to speed for the American Studies curriculum. So these kids who are very much the minority, they huddle together and they're suppressed.
It's clear from talking to Charlotte that the lack of racial and socioeconomic diversity at her school bothers her.
They're supposed to be the smart kids of New York City, but that's definitely not what plays out. It's definitely more which kids whose parents have the money to pay for resources.
Oftentimes in conversations about diversity, the focus is on providing access and opportunity to underprivileged students. But Charlotte says the lack of diversity is also harming privileged students.
My school's dead in the center of the Bronx, and there are all these kids from the Upper West Side that take private bus services to get to school. So they take Valo to school, they have their specialized education, they take a private bus service home to the Upper West Side. They have no sense of the real world. Like New York City to them is going to my perfect school in the middle of nowhere and then going back to Manhattan. I think it's really dangerous for kids that come from privilege to only see peers that look like them. And that just like even further institutionalizes discrimination. And part of the reason why so much discrimination in the world exists is because people have never been around others who don't look like them.
If you take away the test prep, the numbers, the time and money invested into getting in, you have to ask yourself, what's the purpose of specialized high schools? As my first year of Stuyvesant is coming to an end, I am forced to wonder, what does it all mean? It's conflicting because I appreciate the opportunities specialized high schools offer, but at the same time, I question whether or not my ability to get into these schools is indicative of anything. But one thing's for sure, these racial disparities are indicative of our segregated school system, and a system that runs counter to the purpose of public schools. They're supposed to reflect the public. This is Yasmin Chokrain, signing off.
I love how Charlotte and Catherine's experiences really humanize the problem.
Totally. They brought the numbers to life. So, Sabrina, let's talk a little bit about what's being done to address the problem.
Well, our new school's chancellor, Richard Carranza, has been really outspoken about the problems associated with segregation and academic screening in the school system. And Mayor de Blasio's position has been consistent.
And if I had my way, there would not be a single test. I don't even understand why Albany gets to decide anything about our specialized high schools to begin with. This should be a local decision.
He brings up this legal barrier.
Are you talking about the state law?
Yeah, exactly. Back in 1971, when civil rights groups started pressing the chancellor, a guy named Harvey Scribner, on the lack of diversity in specialized schools, the state legislature responded by throwing together a bill that enshrined the single-test admissions policy in state law. And it's still in the books today.
You know, I still can't get over that. how the state could decide local school admissions policy.
And the real irony is that there were way more Black and Hispanic students at specialized high schools in the 1970s than there are today.
So Taylor, how are we gonna fix this?
Well, there are a lot of places that are doing better than New York City on this issue. University systems in Texas and a few other states have these policies where if you're in, say, the top 10% of your high school class, you're guaranteed a seat at a state university. And Lazar Trestran from the Community Service Society thinks we should apply that approach to specialized high schools here.
What we're saying is use the 7th grade combined ELA and math exams.
ELA is English Language Arts.
And take a certain number of those slots and reserve them for students from the top 3% of every middle school in New York City.
Because middle school classes tend to be fairly small, that means this method would apply to
students who are, for the most part, valedictorians and salutatorians at their middle schools right now.
Sabrina, that means you would have gotten to go to Brooklyn Latin.
Man, that would have been nice. I like this plan.
Lazar's research shows that if you use this method to fill just 1/5 of the seats at specialized schools, it would double the number of Black and Hispanic students. And here's the kicker. Overall proficiency in math and English, according to state standards, would go up.
The DOE's response has not been to challenge the state law, but rather expand access to test prep in underserved communities through the DREAM program.
Bronx, give us a D. Brooklyn, give us an R.
This is footage from a 2012 launch party for the DREAM program, free specialized high school test prep for low-income students.
What does that spell? DREAM! What are we here to do today?
Next year, the DOE has budgeted $4 million for DREAM and other efforts aimed at diversifying specialized high schools. But so far, the results of those efforts have been disappointing.
The total number of Black and Hispanic students accepted to specialized high schools went from 524 last year to 527 this year. You hate to put it in these terms, but that's more than $1 million for each additional student that was accepted. We know we're just scratching the surface on this issue of specialized high schools, and there are lots of perspectives out there, so get in touch with us if you have something to add to the conversation. You can email miseducationpod@gmail.com or message us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at miseducationpod.
Before we go, shout out to Alberto Lugo, aka DJ Singro, for these beats that you've been listening to. He's one of our interns and he's super talented. Hit him up on Instagram and YouTube at DJ Singro.
We also want to thank the reporters and editors from the Hechinger Report, a nonprofit outlet that covers inequality and innovation in education. They're partnering with us to take this podcast to the next level. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon.
Shout DREAM!